Now, the perfect video game simply doesn't exist. So much mind-boggling work goes into even a simple low-budget game that it's only inevitable that accidents and mistakes are going to happen. And the bigger the game is, with a larger budget and more populous development team, the likelier it becomes for glaring issues to slip through the cracks and be discovered by players after release. Yet, not all mistakes are created equal, and some of them aren't actually even mistakes at all. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game mistakes that were totally intentional. Number 10. Alan, please add more detail. Many of the Hitman games. In the Hitman Absolution level Birdie's Gift, you need to take part in a target shooting minigame in order to get your precious silver baller pistols back, and in the event that your score ends up being 666, you'll be greeted with the message, Alan, please add more detail. Oops, did IO Interactive accidentally leave a note in the game intended for one of the developers to flesh out some of the flavor text? Well, not quite. This is actually a reference to a mistake from the previous Hitman game Blood Money, where in the mission, A Dance with the Devil, players who pick up a crate of lobster and read the flavor text would see, Alan, please add details, as one of the dev teams seemingly forgot to remove this note to one of the series' 3D artists, Alan Hansen. Absolution is far from the only game in the series to intentionally reference this gaffe though. In 2016's Hitman Reboot, a post-it note asking Alan to add more details can be found next to a computer, and the HD remaster of Blood Money even hilariously changed the original message to, any details yet, Alan? Kinda brilliant, really. Number 9. The 444 Soft Lock. Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town. Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town has a seemingly incredibly bizarre, even rather unnerving glitch, where if players attempt to watch the TV at 4:44 AM, the game will become soft-locked. That is, that the player will be frozen in place as a bugged-out dialogue box repeatedly opens and closes. And though this absolutely looks like a glitch that accidentally made its way into the game, it was actually totally deliberate and included as an attempt to terrify Japanese players for whom the number 4 has a very specific significance. In Japan, the number 4 is considered unlucky due to its pronounced similarity for shi, the Japanese word for death, with the superstition being widespread enough that many hotels and hospitals even miss out floors and rooms numbered 4. And so Japanese players who stumbled across this glitch would have had the proverbial scared right out of them, possibly believing that the game itself was cursed. Thankfully, it is possible to escape the soft lock by rotating the directional button in a circle for a little while until the dialogue box finally stops its sorcery and lets you get on with the rest of the game. Number 8. The lever that turns off the sun. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. During your travels in The Witcher 3, you might stumble across an abandoned manor, a dilapidated, deserted estate east of Oxenfurt, which contains a conspicuous lever at the top, and if you pull the lever, the game world will suddenly be plunged into darkness for about 15 seconds, all while Big G over here quips, wonder what this means. When enterprising players discovered this upon launch, many initially believed that it was a bug, or perhaps even part of an unfinished mission which CD Projekt Red forgot to fully remove from the game. And while the developer hasn't ever formally commented on this phenomenon, given that the lever literally turns off the sun, it's far more likely that it's a cute Easter egg, a literal light switch that kills the biggest light source in the game, as though you're actually in the Truman Show or something. Given that a nearby quest allows Big G to pick up a sword called the Emmentaler, as in the cheese, it's quite reasonable to assume that the devs were just having a bit of fun here. Number 7. The broken arachnophobia toggle. Evil West. Now, last year's third-person shooter Evil West received quite a bit of praise from players for a comfort setting that should have probably been present in most of today's video games, which is arachnophobia mode. Because spiders are one of the most common fears that there is, it makes sense for games developers to include a toggle to turn them on or off, at once avoiding players encountering triggering content and ensuring a few extra sales in the process. Just as you enter a dark and dingy cave earlier on in the game, you're actually warned that the spiders are a-coming, and if you prefer to turn them invisible, you can simply select the option in the menu, which sounds totally reasonable, right? Well, not quite. You see, players who turn the setting on and then switch it off again will suddenly be greeted with hundreds of the damn things crawling all over the surrounding area. Upon launch, many players understandably believe this to be a glitch, but given that the developer Flying Wild Hog hasn't patched this issue almost a year after its release, it's safe to say that this was a very deliberate act of trolling indecisive players who toggled the mode on and off again. Pretty cruel, but at the same time, also pretty funny. Number 6. Wave Dashing, Super Smash Bros. Melee. Now, despite its generally glowing reception from fans and critics alike, Super Smash Bros. Melee was nevertheless somewhat controversial in the fighting game community due to the introduction of a mechanic which many initially believed to be a bug or exploit, and that was wave dashing. Now, wave dashing is a technique executed by air dodging diagonally into the ground, causing the player's character to slide a short distance along the ground. Basically, it gives the player a huge tactical advantage, allowing them to have a much greater degree of control of their movements, attacks, and shielding during combat. Now, many felt that Nintendo didn't intend for players to find and utilize wave dashing, but in an interview with Nintendo Power, director Masahiro Sakurai confirmed that the mechanic was indeed something his team discovered during development and actively decided to keep it in the final game. It was ultimately removed from the sequel Super Smash Bros. Brawl in an attempt to close the skill gap between advanced and casual players, though did return for the most recent entry into the series, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Number 5. The KRAIDGIEF skip. I Wanna Be the Guy. Now, I Wanna Be the Guy may be a glorious parody of classic retro video games, yet you couldn't be blaming for assuming that the KRAIDGIEF skip glitch was, well, a glitch. During the 3-phase boss fight, it's actually possible to skip the second phase entirely. Basically, you needed to hit KRAIDGIEF 15 times in order to trigger the second phase, and another 10 hits to trigger the third. But if you're lucky or indeed skilled enough, you can blast him with 25 projectiles while he's still in the first phase. This will cause the boss to skip his second phase and go right to the third, albeit while still being on the ground as he should be in phase 2, making it much easier to keep shooting him until he's dead. Basically, this is more or less a glitch, albeit one which developer Michael O'Reilly discovered during testing, and because he appreciated the accidental ingenuity of it all, he decided to keep it in the final game as a secret for players to discover themselves. Number 4. The badly rendered wallpaper, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. In Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the recent remakes of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, you might take a look at the wallpaper in the player character's bedroom and find the zigzag pattern rather strange, as though it kind of wasn't meant to look like that. But much like Hitman's Alan callback, in the remake this was a reference to an actual wallpaper glitch in the original Nintendo DS version of Diamond and Pearl, where a rendering bug caused the straight grey lines on the wallpaper to form a zigzag pattern. This was due to a quirk of the DS's rendering capabilities, confirmed by pretty much anyone who's ever played the game on a DS emulator, where the textures will display correctly as straight lines. Yet the developers of the remake opted to pay homage to that infamous bug by sort of recreating it, albeit while making it look a little less garish. Number 3. The Spinning Cloud, Save the Ninja Clan. Platformer Save the Ninja Clan contains a host of secrets for the player to unlock by way of bugs which can be encountered throughout the game. Stumbling upon one of these apparent glitches will then result in a command line box appearing, with the developer even typing messages to the player, most often imploring them to keep on playing the game as it's supposed to be. And some of these glitches are certainly more obviously intentional than others. Case in point, in the game's third level, you might spot a cloud randomly spinning around in the sky. Now, this early on in the game, you'd be forgiven for assuming that it was indeed a real bug, a result of the developers improperly programming the cloud's placement and movement parameters in the sky. But if you jump up in an attempt to reach the cloud, you'll suddenly be allowed to defy physics and run across the sky, all while a message from the dev chides you for not simply ignoring this apparent mistake. Number 2. Headless Isaac Clarke, Dead Space Remake. Those who purchased the digital deluxe edition of the recent Dead Space remake were gifted with the Infested suit, a cosmetic upgrade which makes protagonist Isaac Clarke's suit appear deformed as though it itself had succumbed to the necromorph infection. It is positively grotesque, yet some players noted a particular apparent bug for any cutscenes or scripted sequences where Isaac was asked to remove his helmet, because his head was suddenly nowhere to be seen. Now, it certainly looks like a glitch upon first glance, yet it's of course important to remember that the infested suit gives Isaac a cosmetic makeover, and given that decapitating necromorphs is one of the easiest ways to be rid of them, it's absolutely fitting that Isaac's head suddenly goes bye-bye. Developers Motive Studio eventually confirmed on Twitter that this gruesome accident was anything but, and that it was instead a completely intended part of the infested suit's design. Now, considering how innately jarring it looks though, you can't really blame people for believing that this was a bug. And number 1, the gambling glitch. Fable 2 pub games. Shortly before the release of Fable 2, a tie-in collection of minigames was released to the Xbox Live Arcade, known as Fable 2 pub games, and players soon quickly realised that they could game the system by abusing a specific glitch. In the card game Fortune's Tower, if players pressed the left bumper button on their controller at a certain point in play, they could suddenly raise their stake tenfold without any additional charge. Word quickly spread like wildfire online, and so it wasn't long before Fable creator Peter Molyneux chimed in, revealing that the exploit was deliberately coded into the game, with the implication being that it was basically a honeypot intended to catch cheaters. Molyneux told IGN that players hoping to carry their ill-gotten gains over to Fable 2 would have a surprise waiting for them, suggesting that they'd likely lose all of their illicitly accrued cash and perhaps even receive a further in-game punishment as well. Now, in fairness, it's tough to find any concrete reports of the outcome to all of this, and given that Molyneux is the gaming industry's king of empty promises, or if you want to be less charitable, a snake oil salesman, it's possible that he was simply lying about the bug being intentional in order to save face. All the same, it definitely makes for a rather entertaining story. And there we go, my friends, those were 10 video game mistakes that were totally intentional. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules, and you can go follow me over at the Future Game Show, or FGS, where I'm doing all of my gaming content going forward. Hope to see you over there. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself well with love and respect, because you deserve all the best things in life, like love, happiness, and success, my friend. And do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise. You are a massive legend, and I want you to go out there and utterly smash it today. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.